Skimming a passage should not take you beyond 3 to 4 minutes for each passage. If you're taking the academic model, you should not take more than 5 minutes to skim through a passage. Whereas if you're taking the general training model, it should not take you more than 3 minutes to skim through any passage. This is very significant. Why is this? For the academic model of the IELTS, you have 3 passages and you have 60 minutes. A clear delineation of the time would give us 20 minutes each for each passage. You need to use, out of that 20 minutes, you're using less than 5 minutes or at most 5 minutes to skim through the passage. Anything that goes beyond that time will cut into the time that you need to answer the questions and cross-check your answers. Skimming, although very important, is not something that you need to sit down and dwell on for so long. It is meant to actually improve and increase your speed, not to make you spend or waste so much time. When skimming through a passage, it also helps you with global understanding questions. What are global understanding questions? These are questions that focus on the entire reading passage. For example, questions about what is the author's stand, or what is the author's perspective of the concept, or what is the author trying to say when he says so thing. Skimming is the kind of strategy that will enable you to answer those questions easily, because when you skim through a passage, you end up having an overview and end up having seeing the big picture for the passage, as opposed to scanning where you're only reading a specific part of the passage. Skimming through will give you an overview and enable you to answer questions on summary, general global understanding questions, and questions that summarize the whole message in the passage. For example, find a suitable title for the passage is a question that can only be answered if you skim through the whole passage. Because this question is talking about you summarizing the whole information in the passage and coming up with a one-sentence description for your summary. Another type of question that could easily be answered just by skimming through a passage is what is the writer's attitude or view of the subject of the passage? These are questions that skimming will enable you to answer. When you skim through a passage, a couple of things will catch your eye when you're skimming through a passage. Names will catch our eye, numbers will catch our eye, and special symbols. What do I mean by names? If I'm reading through a passage and I see the word Egypt, or I see the word Marcus, I would definitely pause, even if it's just 1 second or 2 seconds on that word, because it will catch my attention. If I give you a piece of paper now that has a passage on it, and I tell you to spend 10 seconds looking at that passage and extract 5 different things that you can see, I can assure you that out of 10 people, 8 of them will extract names as one of the first things that their eye could see. Why are names so significant? One, they will be capitalized. They will start with a capital letter, which means that in the midst of all the surrounding words, they will probably be bigger. And also, they are usually not common English words, except for names that are common English words like stone, brown, rose. Every other name will stand out because it is not a usual English word. Another thing that will stand out will be numbers. Numbers will stand out because they are figures in the midst of words, so they will catch our attention. Finally, special symbols like brackets, words written in italics, apostrophes, words written in bold, all these will also catch our attention. So when you're skimming through a passage, apart from the fact that you're just trying to get the overview of the passage, you're also noticing where all these things, all these details that I mentioned could be located. Most times, 7 out of 10 times, you will discover that those things usually constitute the key words that you will use to scan for your answers. Very, very significant and very important. I mentioned earlier that in subsequent videos, we will go through a practical exercise on how to use skimming and scanning, where I will demonstrate how I would do it, and I would advise you to also try it out at home. Scanning. Scanning involves searching a text quickly for a specific piece of information. Very basic. Involves searching a piece of information, a piece of text, or a body of text quickly for a specific piece of information. How do you use this? let's go on. When scanning, all you need to do is this. If I get a passage on the topic Nigeria, after skimming through the passage, I was able to discover that it has 5 paragraphs, and the 5 paragraphs are arranged in a way that they deal with specific areas when talking about Nigeria. Paragraph 1 talks about the history of Nigeria. Paragraph 2 talks about the political composition of Nigeria. Paragraph 3 talks about the economy of Nigeria. Paragraph 4 talks about the tribes in Nigeria. And paragraph 5 talks about the future of Nigeria. All this information are things that I got just from skimming through that passage. The first question in the passage asks, the legislative houses in Nigeria are dash in number. And they give you options A to D, 2, 4, 6, 8. Where will I go to scan for that answer? Because I have skimmed through that passage, I already have an idea, a clear idea of how the passage is organized. The legislative houses in Nigeria would definitely be under the political paragraph. If I do not want to make that leap, I don't want to jump to that conclusion, what do? The question says, how many are the legislative houses in Nigeria? What do? I underline the word legislative houses and I underline the word how many. I will go to the passage and scan for where I saw the word legislative houses. Once I get to where I found legislative houses, chances are that I would find the answer to my information either in the sentence before or in the sentence that follows that particular place where I found that keyword. This is how you use scanning. Identify a keyword in your question and then go to the passage to scan for that keyword. But there's a caveat to that. Most times, and this is a very significant tip, most times in the IELTS, the keyword that you have underlined in the passage will not be will not be directly present in the passage. 8 times out of 10, it will be a synonym or a paraphrase of that particular keyword that you will find in the passage. This is why we established at the beginning of this series of videos for the IELTS Multi-step program that your knowledge of synonyms and your ability to paraphrase is a significant contributor to your success in the IELTS. When you are scanning, you're going to be using or depending on your knowledge of synonyms a lot, which is why I always advise candidates to please show up their skills in this area before taking the IELTS test itself. The number of words per question. What does this mean? In the reading test, there are instructions that usually specify the number of words that you can write. For example, in questions that require you to fill in the gap in sentences, you are usually given a specific number of words to write. I have discovered over the years that this is one of the most significant contributors to failure in the IELTS. A lot of test takers do not read the instructions or they do not interpret the instructions correctly, and they end up writing more than the stipulated number of words for the question. Please, as much as possible, when you get to a particular question, read the instructions. Read the instructions that tell you the format for answering those questions. Does the question require you to write down the letters only? Does the question require you to write down the words? How many words are you required to write to answer those questions? The most common instructions that you get in the IELTS will be 1 word only, no more than 2 words and or a number, no more than 3 words and or a number. Please do not disregard these instructions. Read them. Make sure that you understand them before you attempt answering the questions or before you attempt the test itself. Remember to use synonyms and paraphrases in your search, as this will make your finding the answer faster. For the example that I gave earlier about the passage about Nigeria, now the person who does not have synonyms or who does not know any synonyms for the word legislative house, a synonym for that will be the parliament, right? So what you will find in the passage could be the houses of parliament in Nigeria are 2, the Senate and the House of Assembly or the House of Representatives. In essence, your knowledge of synonyms and paraphrasing will go a long way in speeding up the process of answering questions in the reading section in the IELTS. Synonyms and paraphrasing will make you find your answers faster. And speed is an essential element of success in the IELTS. So you need to, as much as possible, ensure that you are strong on your knowledge of synonyms if you want to use the skimming and scanning method for the reading test. Moving on, once you found your answer, meaning that after you've identified a keyword in the question, you've gone to scan for the keyword in the question, in the passage. Once you've located where the keyword is in the passage, what do? You read the sentence before it, you read the sentence after it. Your answer is going to be either in the sentence where you found your keyword, the one preceding it, or the one succeeding it. Once you find your answer, what else do you do? Once you find your answer, like I mentioned, you read the next line or the first line before it so that you can confirm if this actually is the answer, and to also confirm how your answer occurs in the context in which it has been used. Why is this important? Word usage is dependent on context. Word usage is dependent on context. The word bad automatically means a negative thing. But if it is used in a context for, let's say, for example, if a passage is discussing hip hop and you're talking about Michael Jackson, and you say Michael Jackson used the word bad as one of the titles of his songs, and in that song, the word bad there didn't have a negative connotation. In fact, it actually meant cool. So, for example, you see a sentence in a passage that says, we had a nice time eating at the restaurant. Their salad was bad, and with an apostrophe, with a exclamation mark there. The salad was really bad. And this is a conversation between friends where they are using that as a slang. The word bad there definitely does not have a negative connotation, but has a positive connotation. But I digress. The essence of that digression is just to underline the fact that word usage is dependent on the context in which it is used. And you will do well to remember that instead of just taking individual words and giving dictionary definitions to them, irrespective of how it is being used in the passage. Now, once you found your answer, do you go straight ahead to just write out the answer? No. You need to confirm, you need to cross-check if it aligns with what the question wants. Now, there are different schools of thought for this. Some people say you find the answer, put it down, and you move on. Some others say you find your answer, put it down, and you put a star beside it. You put a star sign beside it to remind yourself that you've chosen this answer as your first choice, but you still need to do a little bit of confirming or rechecking before you decide on that answer. Putting a star beside it means that at the end of the reading test, which is probably, and you have like 5 minutes to submission, and you're reviewing your own answers, you would get to that question and discover that, why did I put a star sign beside it? Oh, it means I want to recheck this, and you go back and reconfirm or recheck it. Or you just say, oh yes, I wanted to recheck it, but now I'm sure that this is the answer, I don't need to recheck it, and you erase that star sign. Crossing out wrong answers also helps you. Crossing out wrong answers would lead you to a process called elimination. In a question that has 4 options, before I go ahead to start checking all the options, if I read the question and I go to the passage to check out my answers, and I discover that 2 of those options are definitely wrong and do not have any bearing at all to the question that is asked, I cross them out. What does this do? It reduces the field in which I have to find my answer. Dealing with 2 possible options is much more easier than dealing with 4 possible options. Remember, most of the strategies that you need to deploy for the reading section in the IELTS test will be channeled towards increasing your speed. Accuracy is secondary to speed, because if you are given 7 hours to take the reading test, you will most likely get 40 out of 40 questions. You will get all the questions accurately because you've had time to read, reread, cross-check, and recheck. But because you have just 1 hour to finish the 40 questions, speed becomes an essential commodity. So you need to, as much as possible when you're practicing, work on ways to improve your speed. How do I find my answers faster? How do I confirm my answers faster? Much more than you focusing on how to get the correct answer only. Finally, do not rely on your own knowledge when dealing with the reading passages. What do I mean by this? If you're a doctor and you get a passage on how to operate in the theater, you do not go in there with the wealth of your own knowledge and using that to answer the questions. The only source material that you can or you must depend on for the IELTS is the reading passage itself. So even if the information in the reading passage contradicts what you know as a doctor, as a practicing doctor, you do not have any reason or any right to put what you know as the answer there. The only thing that can be regarded as correct in the context of the IELTS is the information gotten from the passage, which means that the passage is your constitution, it's your Bible, it's your Quran, it's your source material, it's your fountain of knowledge. I see a lot of people get into the IELTS, especially when it gets to questions that ask them to confirm a fact or that ask them to confirm a view or a claim, which are the true, false, not given, or yes, no, not given questions. I see a lot of people having challenges with this question because their own previous knowledge or their own body of knowledge contradicts or is interfering in the process of deciding if the information given in the question is either corresponding with what is in the passage, or it is opposite to what is in the passage, or it is not there at all. Please, as much as possible, the only source material that should inform your knowledge, that should guide the whole process in the reading test, is the reading passage itself. So what are the common problems that you must avoid? Things that you should not do at all in the reading section of the IELTS test. First thing, reading the text in depth before you answer the questions. Avoid this. And I've stated that the reason why you are avoiding this most specifically is because it is just a waste of time. You have a 2,000 word passage and all the relevant information that you need to answer the 14 to 12 questions assigned to that passage are just 500 words. Spending 15 to 11 or 12 minutes reading to digest that passage is a waste of useful time that you can use on other passages. The second thing that you should not do is not answer all the questions. Please, as much as possible, each question carries 1 mark. And to get the maximum scores for the general training module, you need to get 40 out of 40 correct. Any question you leave unanswered is an automatic reduction in your band score. So every question must be answered in the reading section of the IELTS. Any question that you do not know, that you are not sure of, please guess. In subsequent videos, I will be sharing some guessing strategies and guessing techniques that will help you make an educated guess or choose an answer that is more likely to be true or to be correct, even without reading the passage or without even interacting with the passage or the information in the passage so well. Another thing that you need to be very careful of or you want to avoid doing is not reading the whole sentence. What do I mean by this? You are scanning by reading the question, identifying a keyword in the question, and then going to the passage to scan through the passage to find where your keyword occurs. When you find your keyword, ensure that you read the whole sentence in which that keyword occurs. Or if possible, read at least the sentence before it, the main sentence itself, and the sentence after it. Do not decide on an answer by just reading a particular phrase or just a particular section of a sentence, because there's a likely chance that your answer or the information or that detail may be changed or may be qualified or modified later on in the sentence. I have seen this mistake account for a lot of failures in the IELTS, and I do not want you to fall victim to this. So this is a very important strategy or tip that you must review and review over and over again. Like I mentioned earlier, the only way to benefit from these videos is to practice as much as possible. Watch these videos, pause them when you get to an interesting tip or strategy that you need, bring out a question paper and find a way to apply that strategy that you just learned. And when you find that it is difficult for you to apply, try it over and over again till it becomes second nature to you. The IELTS is going to be successful, or the IELTS is going to be a success for someone who has become a creature of habit. You need to practice so well that it becomes an habitual thing for you to succeed in the IELTS. Failure to do this will set you up for, as much as possible, like I said, failure, and you do not want to fail in the IELTS. The reading section of the IELTS is one of the easiest parts to pass, and you should, as much as possible, leverage on this to ensure that you get that desired band 9.